It's something that probably resonates with a lot of people listening, this idea that a student's background, their family's situation, it's got to have some connection to how they do in school.
Right.
And maybe you've wondered, well, just how strong is that connection? What are we actually talking about when we say socioeconomic status and education?
Uh-huh.
And I guess the big question, is this something fixed? Or uh, can anything really be done?
Yeah. Can we shift the odds? It's a crucial set of questions.
So today we're doing one of our deep dives. We're looking at a whole lot of research to try and, unpack this for you.
Exactly. And we're basing this mainly on a really significant piece of work you shared. It's what's called an umbrella review.
An umbrella review.
Yeah, think of it like a review of reviews. This one came out in the Educational Psychology Review last August 2024. It synthesizes findings from, get this, 48 other reviews.
Wow, 48. That's a lot of research synthesis.
It really is. All focused on that link between socioeconomic status, SES, and student learning.
Okay, so our mission today is basically to pull out the key insights from this huge analysis. We want to go beyond just, money matters.
Right.
We'll look at how researchers even define and measure SES, which sounds like it's gotten more complex.
Definitely.
We'll look at the actual size of the impact, what factors are kind of hidden beneath the surface, and some maybe surprising ways of thinking about this. The goal is really a nuanced picture.
And just to give a sense of the foundation here, those 48 reviews, they themselves covered countless individual studies
Right.
across different countries, all the way from pre-K up to university, looking at all sorts of learning outcomes. So, yeah, that's a pretty solid evidence base we're drawing on.
Okay, let's dive in then, starting with the basics. Defining and measuring SES. What are we actually talking about?
Well, traditionally, as this big review points out, SES was mostly seen through the lens of, like, resources.
Okay.
So researchers would look at things like parents' education levels, their jobs, family income, maybe what kind of resources were physically in the home.
Thanks.
And the Coleman report, way back in '66, was really huge here. It famously suggested family background actually mattered more for achievement than the specific school a kid went to.
Right, I remember that causing quite a stir. But things have moved on since then, I take it.
Oh, absolutely. There's been a real evolution. It's not just about those objective things anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There's this growing understanding that subjective perceptions are important too, how people see their own social standing.
How do they measure that?
Well, they use tools like the MacArthur scale. It basically asks people to place themselves on a social ladder, compared to others in society. Captures that felt sense of status.
Interesting. So it's not just the facts, but how you feel about your place. What else is changing?
Another big shift is moving beyond just the individual student or family.
Okay.
There's more focus now on collective SES. So looking at the SES profile of, say, an entire school or a neighborhood.
Ah, the environment.
Exactly. To understand those broader influences, the moving to opportunity experiment is a good example they mentioned.
What did that show?
It showed real benefits, especially for younger kids, when their families moved from high poverty areas to lower poverty ones.
So the context itself really matters.
It does. But there's a caution here. You have to avoid the ecological fallacy.
No.
Meaning you can't just assume everyone in a low SES neighborhood, for example, has the exact same experience or outcome. You look at the group level, but remember the individuals within it vary.
Got it. Context matters, but don't paint everyone with the same brush. Now, you mentioned something about access to action. What's that?
Yeah, this is a really key shift, I think.
Right.
It's moving from just asking, does a student have resources, to how do they actually use different kinds of what researchers call capital.
Capital, like money.
Well, yes, economic capital is part of it,
Yeah.
money, assets, but there's also cultural capital.
Which is?
Things like the knowledge, the ways of speaking, the behaviors that schools tend to value and reward.
Right.
Familiarity with certain books, museums, that kind of thing.
And there's more.
And social capital. That's about networks, the support systems you can tap into for help or opportunities.
Right, so it's not just having the computer, but knowing how to use it effectively, and maybe knowing someone who can help if it breaks.
Exactly. And interestingly, looking back at research over like a century, from 1916 to 2020, the emphasis in measuring SES seems to have shifted a bit. Less focus on the social connections, more on the cultural and economic aspects lately.
Huh. Wonder why that is. Maybe it reflects changes in society or what schools emphasize.
Could be. The review also talks about moving beyond deficits. What's that about?
Ah, yes, the deficit view. Sounds negative.
It often was, yeah. Historically, the focus could sometimes implicitly be on what lower SES students supposedly lacked.
Right.
But the asset-based perspective flips that. It actively looks for and recognizes the unique strengths and resources that these students and their communities do possess.
Okay, like what kind of strengths?
Well, things like often having really strong aspirations, maybe skills developed navigating complex systems, because,
Mm-hmm.
frankly, many low-income families have to become experts at that.
Sure.
Strong family support networks, resilience built from overcoming challenges, rich social connections within their communities,
Uh-huh.
sometimes linguistic diversity, too, if multiple languages are spoken. It's often called community cultural wealth.
Community cultural wealth. I like that. It's seeing value where maybe traditional measures didn't look.
Exactly. It's more empowering, more holistic, acknowledging what students bring.
But even with these better ways of thinking, you're saying measuring SES is still tricky.
Oh, definitely. Big challenges remain. I mean, think about it. Young kids often don't know their parents' exact education level or income. That's a practical data collection issue.
Right.
Plus, there's this ongoing debate. Is low income, say, the cause of fewer opportunities, or is SES itself more like a result of other underlying things?
The chicken and egg problem.
Kind of, yeah. And then you've got practical things like, how do you even define a poverty line? That varies hugely place to place, time to time,
True.
and making sure your measures are fair across different groups and stay relevant as technology changes what counts as a resource. It's a constant challenge for researchers.
Okay, so it's complex to define, complex to measure, but despite that, the research clearly shows it does have an impact. Let's get to that. How big an impact are we talking about?
Well, the link is consistent across a whole range of outcomes. Academic achievement, obviously, especially math and science, seem sensitive to it.
Uh-huh.
But also things like academic progress over time, how kids do in early learning, college persistence, sticking with it, and dropout rates from higher ed. It touches basically the whole educational journey.
Wow. Okay, so can we put a number on it? You mentioned the Umbrella Review did its own analysis.
Yes, they did what's called a second-order meta-analysis,
Yeah.
basically crunching the numbers from all those previous
And the
meta-analyses.
result?
They found an average correlation there value between SES and student learning of 0.22.
Okay, 0.22. Now, instinctively, doesn't sound huge, like on a scale to 1.
Right. In everyday terms, maybe not. But here's the key thing. In educational research, a correlation of 0.22 is actually considered large
Large. Really? Why is that?
because education outcomes are influenced by so many different factors. Finding any single factor that shows that level of consistent relationship is significant. It means that SES isn't just some minor background noise, it's a substantial factor.
Can you put that 0.22 into perspective somehow? What does it mean for like an actual student?
Okay, let's try. A correlation of 0.22 translates roughly like this. If you take a student who is one standard deviation above the average SES.
So noticeably better off, but not necessarily super rich.
Exactly. That student is likely to score about 0.45 standard deviations higher on a standardized achievement test compared to the average student.
0.45 standard deviations. Still a bit abstract for me.
Okay, think percentile points. That difference of 0.45 standard deviations, it's roughly equivalent to a gap of about 17 percentile points.
17. Okay, that I understand. That's going from the 50th percentile average to the 67th. That's a big jump.
It is a big jump. And think about it this way, too. That 0.45 standard deviation effect, it's a pretty hefty chunk of the learning progress we typically expect a student to make in an entire school year, especially in the earlier grades.
Wow. Okay, so that really drives home the significance. It's not just statistically significant, it's educationally meaningful.
Very much so. It shapes trajectories.
And what about publication bias? Did they worry that maybe only studies finding a link get published?
That's always a concern in research synthesis, yeah. But in this case, the Umbrella Review looked for statistical signs of publication bias and didn't find strong evidence for it being a major issue here.
Okay.
The link seems pretty robust across the board, which adds confidence to the finding.
So the impact is real. It's significant. But SES itself doesn't just like magically lower test scores. How does it actually work? What are the mechanisms?
Right, this is where an ecological perspective helps, thinking about all the different layers influencing a child.
Layers
Like factors within the student, their own beliefs, how they handle stress. Then there's the home and family environment, parental factors.
Yeah, but then
Yeah, school factors, teachers, resources, maybe biases, and even the broader community resources. It's all interconnected.
Okay, let's unpack some of those. How does SES affect a student's sort of internal world, their self-perception?
Well, the research suggests that, unfortunately, students from lower SES backgrounds might, on average, develop lower self-confidence related to academics.
Hmm.
And that lower confidence, that lower self-efficacy belief in your ability to succeed can directly impact motivation, how much effort they put in, whether they persist when things get tough. It aligns with theories like social cognitive theory.
That makes sense. If the world keeps giving you signals that you're maybe less than, it's hard to maintain that strong belief in yourself. But what about the family environment?
Two main models come up a lot here.
Yeah.
The family stress model and the family investment model.
Okay.
The stress model basically says economic hardship creates stress for parents. That stress can lead to things like depression, marital conflict, less supportive parenting,
Hmm.
and that, in turn, affects the kids' well-being and learning.
Right. Stress trickles down.
Exactly. And the investment model focuses on the flip side. Higher SES families generally have more resources, not just money, but also time, knowledge, networks
Hmm.
that they can directly invest in their kids' development.
Hmm.
Things like tutoring, extracurriculars, educational toys, museum visits, even just having more time to read together.
So it's kind of a double whammy for lower SES kids, potentially more stress and fewer resources to invest.
That's often the dynamic, yeah.
And what about inside the school building itself?
Well, there's the idea of resource dilution.
Meaning schools in poorer areas just have less stuff.
Often, yes. Fewer resources overall, maybe larger class sizes, potentially less experienced or qualified teachers, or higher teacher turnover.
Which can create this cycle, right? The students who might need the most support end up in schools least equipped to give it.
That's the concern, precisely.
But wait, you said earlier, or the review mentioned, that general ability wasn't strongly tied to SES. How does that fit?
Yeah, that's a really fascinating point from one of the reviews they included. It found that general cognitive ability measured by things like IQ tests didn't correlate nearly as strongly with SES as achievement scores did.
So,
It suggests that while SES creates all these hurdles and affects how learning happens and how achievement is demonstrated, it doesn't necessarily dictate a child's underlying cognitive potential.
okay, that's important. A bit of hope there. Now, the review also talked about SES acting as a moderator, like changing how other things work.
Yes, exactly. SES can sometimes change the strength or even the direction of the relationship between something else and learning.
Give me an example.
Okay, so positive parental involvement is generally good for all kids, right?
Sure.
But some research suggests that high SES students might get an even bigger boost from certain kinds of parental involvement compared to lower SES students. It's like that strong foundation lets them capitalize on it more.
Huh. So the same input has a bigger payoff.
Potentially, in some cases. Another example, parental expectations. They seem to have a stronger positive link to achievement for higher SES kids.
Interesting. Any others?
Maternal employment is a complex one they mention. For higher SES kids, mom working might sometimes correlate with slightly lower outcomes, maybe less direct attention or resources compared to a stay-at-home parent in that context.
Okay.
But for lower SES kids, maternal employment often has a positive effect. The increased income and potential opportunities it brings can outweigh other factors.
Wow, so it really depends on the context provided by SES. What about interventions, school programs designed to help?
This is key. The review suggests lower SES students often stand to benefit more from well-designed, targeted support.
Okay, that's good news.
Things like stable school environments, specific learning programs,
Yeah.
they can really make a difference. But,
There's always a but.
well, there's a nuance. Some early interventions might not work as well if the kids haven't reached a certain basic threshold of skills first.
You need the foundation to build on.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
You need that basic readiness to really take advantage of the new opportunity.
Makes sense. Okay, so SES has its own impact. It mediates other things, but it doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It interacts with other parts of a kid's identity.
Absolute critical point. SES is deeply tangled up with things like gender, race, ethnicity, immigrant background, the neighborhood you live in.
Okay.
And these intersections can lead to cumulative effects.
Meaning disadvantages pile up.
Exactly. Facing challenges related to low SES and racism, for example, can create significantly greater barriers than either one alone.
That's a heavy reality.
It is. But the review also mentions potential compensatory effects.
Like things balancing out.
Sort of. Strengths in one area might help buffer challenges in another. For instance, maybe a family has low income. But there's an incredibly strong cultural emphasis on education within their community that acts as a powerful motivator.
So it's not always just piling on. There can be protective factors too.
Right. It's complex. And the societal context matters too, doesn't it? Like the country you're in.
Definitely. The level of economic development, the cultural values, they can shape how much SES impacts learning. How so?
Well, in countries with really strong social safety nets, universal health care, childcare, robust support systems, the impact of individual family SES might be lessened a bit.
Because some basic needs and opportunities are provided more universally.
Exactly. Or in cultures where education is just incredibly highly valued across all social classes, that might also buffer the effect somewhat.
But didn't the review say something counterintuitive about developed countries?
Ah, yeah, the Heinemann-Loxley effect, basically.
Hmm.
Some research suggests that in less developed countries, the quality of the school itself, its resources, tends to matter more for student achievement than family background does.
Okay.
Whereas in more developed countries where maybe school quality is more consistent or baseline levels are higher, family background factors like SES can actually become relatively stronger predictors of achievement differences between students.
Huh. So as basic school quality improves for everyone, individual family differences might stand out more.
That's one interpretation, yeah. It's a fascinating area.
And finally, what about over time? Is this SES achievement gap getting wider, narrower, staying the same?
The research on that is really mixed, according to this review.
No clear answer.
Not a single consensus, no. Some studies point to a widening gap, which is obviously concerning. Others suggest it might be narrowing in some areas, maybe due to specific policies or interventions, and still others find it's remained pretty stable.
So that's definitely something researchers are still tracking closely.
For sure. Understand those long-term trends is crucial.
Okay, wow, we've covered a lot of ground. Let's try to synthesize this for everyone listening. What are the absolute core takeaways from this deep dive into SES and learning?
All right, first big one. SES is way more than just money. It's income, yes, but also education, jobs, plus subjective feelings of status, the context of your school and community, and how you actually use different kinds of capital, economic, cultural, social. It's complex.
Right, not simple. And second,
The impact is real and significant. That correlation might sound modest, but in education, it translates to a large effect size, a substantial difference in achievement potential, remember those 17 percentile points, and it shapes learning across the board.
definitely landed for me. Okay, what else?
How it works is layered. It's not direct magic. It flows through the student's own self-beliefs, family stress and investment, school resources and climate, teacher expectations,
Yeah.
that whole ecological system.
Many pathways.
But crucial point, it's not necessarily destiny. Targeted support can make a big difference, especially for lower SES students. And recognizing their strengths, that asset-based view, is vital. Don't just focus on deficits.
Hey, focus on assets, interventions matter. And the last key point.
SES doesn't act alone. It's always interacting with race, gender, ethnicity, neighborhood, the whole societal picture. You can't understand SES's role without seeing those intersections.
Right, context is everything.
Pretty much.
So, reflecting on all this, the persistence of this SES influence, the way it shifts and interacts, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, what kind of really fundamental changes, maybe in our education systems, maybe even in society more broadly, would it take to truly level that playing field? So where you start doesn't determine so much about where you end up.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah. This review highlights just how complex it all is, but the need for action feels, well, pretty undeniable. It leaves you thinking, what part can we play, individually or collectively, in trying to create more of those equitable opportunities, something to chew on?